So we're just going to kind of dive in, and my first question, we're going to get to start the discussion off by getting to know our panelists a little better. What made you choose marketing, or how did marketing choose you? Tiffany, I'd like you to start.
All right. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for having me today. And my beginnings of marketing began in Columbus, Ohio, where I was entertainment director for a venue called BOMA, the Bar of Modern Art, which was a 24,000 square foot church that was renovated into 4 nightclubs, an event center, an art gallery, and a 5-star restaurant. And I threw over 1,000 events there, and each one was very unique and demanded a very unique marketing strategy. And of course, an event is only successful if it's got the right marketing. And so by hosting everything from charities to fashion shows, even weddings, concerts, and events of all shapes and sizes, it really got my footing in marketing, and I really found that that was my passion, and everything that I've done after that has always kind of revolved around marketing, and marketing's always been a role in everything that I've done.
Fantastic. Courtney?
First of all, hello everybody. Thank you guys for having me here in Vegas. I'm all the way from Virginia, but very excited to be here. I also wanted to add that I am very proud. Marketing Agency this week was also Agency of the Year by Ad Age, so it's very, very exciting and by A-List. So very, very proud to be here representing our agency. How did I get started? I actually started my career in public relations. I graduated with a degree in PR and knew that I did not want to do PR. It was not for me. But I did love the relationship building, the competitiveness, the writing, and I really got to hone my skills there. And started at a really small agency in Gainesville, Florida, which is where I went to school. And I was always just very curious. I always really wanted to understand more about what are the disciplines that make up this world of advertising and marketing. And I was that probably annoying intern at the time that just asked to be on everything and every project. And can I listen in on the meetings even if I don't have a role? And can I just do whatever I need to do? And business development and new business specifically has always just been this kind of mysterious discipline, right? That I think for a long time, only senior level executives were really a part of. And so naturally, the curiosity of me was like, I've got to touch that hot iron and figure out how to get there, right? So I did. My first gig was like transcribing new business pitches. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. But it was just an awesome experience to learn about the industry, learn about the different disciplines. And I just took this crazy bug and fell in love with the world of business development and new business, and have done that ever since. So that's kind of my story, and I always just like to encourage, if there's something that you're curious about, go after it, because you never know what it can do to transform your career.
Wonderful. As you two have acknowledged, marketing is everything. I fell into marketing because I had a passion for the work that I was involved in. I started asking, how can we tailor this message in a way that is going to connect each one of our audience members in a meaningful way to them? That is probably the most rewarding moment I have found in my career, when I'm able to see and measure the connection that I have made with the brand and the target market. What has been your most rewarding moment in your marketing career, and what do you attribute most to accomplishing that feat? Courtney, can we start with you?
Well, first of all, I do agree with you. It's awesome to be able to see your work impacting the world, and especially someone who isn't, I always like to say, whenever people see commercials on the screen, I can't take credit for it, but I am part of the kind of power of the creativity behind it, right? I think one of the things that I'm most proud of this industry is just the growth that everybody has seen and kind of the trends of marketing. For me specifically, I'm really, really proud of, in my own professional career, just how fast I've been able to grow up in this industry, and because of all the different impacts that, whether it's different trends of diversity and inclusion initiatives, or just the role and the power of creativity, it's really influenced me to really grow and grow into the role of VP really fast. I think I'm one of the quickest VPs at Martin Agency, which is really exciting. But that's one of the things that I really value in kind of moments in marketing.
Wonderful. Tiffany?
One of my most impactful and moments that I was recognized would be the awards that you mentioned in 2022 for 10 Most Inspiring CMOs by C-Level Focus and Top 10 Inspiring Leaders of 2022 by IE Magazine. And it was during the time of the pandemic, and early on as the pandemic approached, I saw it approaching and knew that the threat that it was going to pose to trade shows, which are such a core of so many businesses, and being in Las Vegas, knowing how many trade shows come through the city, to see this trade show industry come to a grinding halt, it was really going to change business as we know it. And so I suggested that our company, which is IoT Marketing, that focused heavily on preparing tech companies to go to a trade show, we were going to have to pivot. And we pivoted to webinars. And the concept was that we could keep the tech ecosystem connected and also suggest solutions for people that are going to need these technology solutions now more than ever before. And so we focused on a new industry each month with our Industry Insights webinar series. And we included different experts, industry leaders, and solution providers to talk about the true challenges in a different industry and how technology can help them solve those problems. And we've attracted 1,500 to 2,500 people per live virtual event each month. And to see that kind of response when so many people are doing webinars, there's so many Zoom webinars out there and everything else that people can attend, and to see that kind of response that we were truly answering a need in the market for something that wasn't being met anywhere else was just truly remarkable.
That was smart.
Thank you.
That was a good thinking on your feet and seeing it coming well in advance. Another rewarding aspect of working in marketing is that I really enjoy working as a team and collaborating on projects. I enjoy when everyone's engines are firing and the train is moving in the same direction, with the same goal. We all know that having the support of your team, whether big or small, is vital to the success of each individual campaign as well as the overall organization. I get to sit here today and say that I am grateful that I have been able to focus on the work and creativity rather than finding a way to be seen or heard, because so many great leaders have paved the path before I entered this field, and I've never felt anything except for support and encouragement. Tiffani, the tagline for IoT Marketing is launching and fueling growth and pre-2020. Your organization specialized in the trade show industry, as you were just mentioning. Where have you been most aware of the landscape changing in terms of women in marketing? Did you notice it at all during the pivot of your organization in offering more web-based solutions and a community to clients?
Well, the role for women in marketing in the tech industry is just like women in the tech industry at all. It's very slim. And there's not a single event that I go to, whether that's virtual or physical, that I'm one of the only women in the room. And so looking at how many women are in marketing now as a whole, there's 64%, it was at its peak in 2019, which is amazing, but in the tech industry, it's still pretty small. So knowing that going into this career, it's definitely looking at things from a different perspective. And even when I'm attending these trade shows and I'm moderating events, it's still such a small percentage of women that are even in the conversation. But it's an important role because I think that women see things from a different point of view. And I know one way that I look at it is more from a problem solution standpoint and not from talking about the technology itself. And so that's one way that I see women are really transitioning and changing the scope of how technology is used as a whole.
Wonderful. So I have the same question for Courtney. Where have you really seen the landscape changing for women in marketing?
It's been a slow change, but I want to celebrate the fact that that there is change, right? I think especially when you look at the agency landscape, you're seeing more and more big, especially holding companies and independent agencies, having more women in leadership. And it's more than just getting to that leadership. It's also you now have a seat, but you also have a voice. You also have power. You can also impact change, right? Where I want to continue to see that grow is, of course, more women of color in those positions as well. But it is really great. I totally echo what you said about just the different perspective that women can bring to leadership and marketing, and different approach and different styles of leadership. I like to say sometimes, and I alluded to this in another question, that women just weren't given a specific playbook that others sometimes that were given, right? Especially women of color, we're having to make this playbook blindly as we grow. And so the more and more women that you're seeing in these high-level positions, I'm sitting next to a female CMO right now, it is more incredible we're able to share these stories with each other so that hopefully we can continue to rise up and give more opportunities and experiences and just notes, really, to all women in marketing so that I continue to grow. Yeah.
I think we can all attest and find gratitude that the landscape has changed for the better, And now the brilliant work that we can all accomplish when great minds come together is even more accessible than ever before. Continuing to encourage others in their creativity and to pursue marketing is more important than ever before. What is your passion project, whether it is short or long term, in terms of women in marketing? And when I say this, I want to note that the marketing agency's tagline is "We fight invisibility in everything we do." And we know that your clients are grateful. What does that mean in reference to today's topic?
Yeah, of course. Let me start with a little breakdown of what Martin's mission is. So our mission is to fight invisibility. And that kind of goes across clients, culture, our people, and our work. So there's a stat that research says that 84% of ads go unnoticed or unremembered. So when we're in a room, we're talking to CMOs and CFOs, and they see this big stat of 84% of your ads aren't getting noticed. They're like, hold on, that's a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and billable hours that we do not need to lose. So how do we fix this? So to us, the marketing agency, we say that that's where we're going to fight invisibility. And the unlock of that is through relevance, right? And finding kind of attention in the strategies or those human truths that really we can lean into that really unlock that power of creativity for brands to break through, to become more relevant and kind of become that 16% versus that 84% of ads that go unnoticed, right? So that's when we're talking to CMOs and CFOs. What it means for our culture is that we want to make sure that everybody is seen and heard and has a voice, right? And so we want to make sure that there's no kind of culture or subculture that goes invisible, right, around the world, especially in marketing and advertising. It's our job to speak to niche cultures and people, right? And we can't do that if we don't represent them. And so a big part of that culture is finding that invisibility and making sure that we have, again, that visibility of everyone to be seen and heard, and then hopefully that's also reflected in the work that we produce. So the first part of your question was about a passion project, and I cheated a little bit and I used this in the last question, but my personal passion is to help create that playbook for women and women of color throughout advertising and navigating that. I know that I've, a lot of this time and along these 10 years, I've kind of navigated this journey solo a little bit, right? And just kind of grasping for inspiration. I know you spoke and sometimes you're the only one in this field and you're trying to figure out where to go, and it's easier when we work together. You talked about teams and collaboration, and this is the cheesiest cliche, but we truly are better together when we can all navigate that. So really helping create this playbook for women of the questions you don't know what to ask, right? When we're in salary negotiations or jobs and roles, and we have these expectations of ourselves that we have to be perfect before we can get promoted to that next role, when a lot of other people sometimes get the job and then really, how did you get that job, right? But how can we create this playbook that we all can work toward, really, to, again, to your point earlier, have more women in leadership positions and not have to do so through guesswork and do so blindly.
When we talk about the marketing agency and we talk about not being invisible, some of their clients are Geico, Axe Body Spray. I think we can all agree that they are not invisible.
We work really, really hard, and honestly, it's just so you guys know, I know a lot of you are agency marketing and you're looking for clients. One thing that is really specific to us at marketing agency is we go after people, we don't go after brands. People leave brands, right? People change. So if you can find those people who share that vision and that philosophy and that same creative ambition who want to be in that 16%, it makes the creative work, the partnership, a lot more worthy and a lot more filled with more depth. If you chase those people who you can build those partnerships and relationships with versus solely going off of those big brand names.
So Tiffani, I will direct the question towards you. A passion project, whether short-term or long-term, for women in marketing.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I love what you said, Courtney, about better together, because definitely being part of a team and having others to collaborate with is so important. One of my personal passion projects is creating a community for women in tech marketing. And like I mentioned before, it is a tough industry, especially for women. And the more that there's a community that others can collaborate with to talk about some of the successes on how to market these technologies, because they're complicated, and trying to figure out ways that it'll really resonate with people, because it is about people. It's not just about the technology. It's about how you solve problems. And so I'm already kind of aiming towards that by creating a session during our Summit of Things event this October that's focused on women in tech. But I'd love to expand on that and do something primarily for women in tech marketing.
I can't wait to hear more. We all have goals in mind as we live our lives, and we all strive for success in all that we set out to do. What does success look like to you when someone says women in marketing? And I think you kind of covered this, but...
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is don't just give us a seat at the table, give us voice, give us power, give us impact. It's not enough when we're just there, right? And then you leave the room, and when decisions need to be made, we don't have control to make those decisions. So success to me is truly putting women in positions to succeed, to make impact, and make long-lasting impact in marketing and advertising.
Tiffany, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that it's about someone that does more than just traditional advertising and really breaks the and marketing and breaks the mold and is disruptive in their approach, where it not only makes a difference in their business, but in other businesses, in other industries. And I know one person that is in women in marketing that I really look up to is Kiki Stockheimer, and she was with another company called New Tech that was a tech company, and she was really the first woman to go and be a spokesperson for technology, and it was unheard of before then. And so I think breaking the mold and doing things differently, and when it echoes beyond just your business and your industry, and people can follow that and take that innovation forward in their own companies and initiatives, that's what I feel success is for women.
Can I add one more thing? I think I just turned my mic off. Sorry, Pete. I know I was supposed to do that. I think one thing is that women in marketing aren't always going to look the same, or be the same, or act the same, or feel the same. And to have the rest of the world and culture recognize that and understand that and accept that, I think is another big piece of this. I think for a really long time, this industry said, oh, we have a woman in here, and that woman might look the exact same way, but we checked the box, and there's a woman in leadership now, right? But how can we continue to broaden that perspective of what women leadership in marketing looks like, again, for a more kind of acceptance, not only just an outside culture, but internally in our different organizations. So again, that leads to that voice and that seat and perspective too.
What a fantastic point. It kind of gets into what we're moving in toward. If this is what success looks like, let's find out what the road to getting there looks like. Where do you see the biggest opportunities in paving the path for our youth today, leading to more women in marketing? Tiffany, let's start with you.
Okay, well, looking at, I'm back to technology again, but there are so many different dimensions of technology, which is what we cover in our Industry Insights webinar series, from IoT to robotics to augmented reality and the metaverse to blockchain and all of the potential for Bitcoin and any other cryptocurrency. There's so many ways of looking at what's happening in technology, but there are so many job opportunities for not only how to build it, but how do we market it once it's built, that if women can tap into that and look at how to look at the problems that are presented, that these different solutions are going to solve, there is such a huge opportunity across so many different industries. It just takes buckling down, doing your homework, figuring out what's really happening, and it takes a lot of research, and it takes talking to people, getting experience, but it's possible. So I think that's the women in tech marketing is one of the biggest opportunities out there.
Fantastic. Definitely agree there. Courtney? What do you
Yeah,
see?
I actually love talking to middle school students. And I know that sounds like very, very young. They are so open-minded, and even elementary, to be honest with you. So open-minded, so creative, so wide-eyed and bushy-tailed of just the possibilities of this world. And I truly believe that like the good lives there. And we're all going to be in good hands if they become our leaders one day. But I think what happens sometimes is, especially in advertising, people believe there's one linear path to getting to something, right? And they don't necessarily see themselves in these roles. And so when you can go to talk to these elementary and middle school and high school people and say, can I understand more about what are your strengths? What are your qualities? What are you good at? What type of, in your everyday life, what are those strengths that you can bring to the table that really help you succeed? Oh, guess what? There's a role in account management who does just that. Oh, you've been responsible. Well, I remember, I would never forget this story of a middle school student who her parents were on bad terms, but she was responsible basically for taking care of her family. And she was like, I'm always having schedules and spreadsheets, and I'm like, mind you, this girl is in middle school. Like, I was like, you're way advanced than I was. I have spreadsheets of where people need to be, of what they need to eat, of what they need to do, and all these different things. And I was like, this is a leap, but it also sounds like you could be a really good project manager one day. Or I have people who dream, and people who love to inspire, and people who love to just see the possibilities. You might make a really great strategist one day. And I think if you're able to put it in kind of real life scenarios into these opportunities that honestly are plethora at advertising and agency, tech, and marketing, and just allow them to see themselves there and get excited about advertising and marketing at a younger age, I think they're more willing to explore that as they get into those college degrees and maybe, hey mom, I don't necessarily want to be that doctor, that lawyer, that scientist. I really want to be in advertising, and here's why. And I think that's a really exciting path to get the youth excited about this field.
Did anyone else get goosebumps while she was talking? When we talk about creating opportunities for others, we often reflect back on our own lives and the opportunities that were provided for us. Who are or have been your biggest advocates, and how did you come in contact with them initially?
Me first. I've had a lot of really great advocates, and I think one of the things that I learned really, really early on was that you kind of have to know what you want to be advocated for who, or kind of give people specific homework. You can't just say, I'm great, right? And expect people to kind of follow that. And one of the things that I learned really, really early on in my career too was find those people who are going to talk great about you when you're not in the room and support you and stand up for you. And that's really how it's defined who are advocates in my life. It's been everything from direct managers, but it's also been people like Kristen Kowala, who's our CEO of Martin, she's someone who I've always been this curious, outspoken, bold, fearless person. And to be honest, a lot of times that's not celebrated. And then I met Kristen, and I don't know if you guys are familiar, hands in the room of anybody who's familiar with Kristen Kowala. If not, she tweets like no other, and she tweets about bold perspectives. And she's not afraid to post about, here's what's going on in the industry, and here's how we want to fight and stand together. And then that's celebrated by the rest of the industry. It makes people want to root for her. It makes people want to root for Martin. And for the first time, I was able to show, okay, bold can be good. Fearless can be good. And it can be celebrated. So Kristen Cavallo, Elizabeth Paul, and definitely other people in marketing roles and chief diversity roles. There's so many people. But it's also just been my peers. I know a lot of times when you're thinking of people who are advocates for you, a lot of times we always look up. And I also know for more junior people that can be intimidating to look up and say, how do I get the CEO to support me? But it's also your peers, right? It's also, those have been some of the biggest people who, again, I'm not in that room, they're like, hey, Courtney's really good for that. Or Courtney just spoke about that, we should get her in the room for this next opportunity. So, sorry that was a long-winded answer, but really, advocates are just people who are going to support you when you're not there, and those are the people you have to belong to.
Sorry, I agree. And Tiffani, who would you say that your biggest advocates have been, and when did you come in contact with them initially?
Well, I have several advocates that help make my webinar series possible throughout so many different industries that it's just mind-blowing. But I'd like to take this back a little bit even further in my history to a time when I was working in a skincare company. And the skincare company was also called New Tech, coincidentally enough, but we did some rebranding of it and created a brand called Mecology. And the original product line was in very old-fashioned bottles that almost looked like the Watson bottles that you would see from like ancient times. And we did a full rebranding of it, and that definitely helped sell the product. But not only did we do that, but looking at it was machines and skincare. So you could get like an oxygen machine, a Dermacell machine. We had all different kinds of great machines. But the original business plan was that you sold the machine, you sold the product, and that's it. And when I was asked to come in and kind of do a rebranding and a remarketing of the product, I suggested that we start making it more of an experience, because that's what people are yearning. And that's what anything from the customer to, even though this was a B2B business, their customer's customer is ultimately going to want that experience. So by doing workshops and courses and teaching them how to use the machines, how to use the products, how to market the products, the response that I got and the advocates that I got as a response that were these skincare professionals was astounding. And so I really think focusing on experience is just so important, and that's just one way. Even with the webinar series, it still goes back to my advocates are there because they're getting an experience. So I think the more you can tie in experience, the more advocates you're going to have, the more lasting impression you're going to have on people as a whole.
Fantastic, and we definitely know this generation coming up, all the generations moving forward, their main focus is experience driven. So, fantastic. Being a cheerleader is part of the evolution of leadership, right? It is one of the job duties that we all must show up for to encourage the bright minds around us, especially those looking up at us. If there was a youth today in the audience who wanted to know what their next step should be in a path toward finding their voice and specialty in marketing, where would you direct them? So we can start with you.
Well, first of all, there's so much information and so many formats available to people for free, and additionally that they can go to school, obviously. But even if it's watching videos on YouTube, listening to podcasts, reading blogs, reading information in books, there's so much great free information out there that even if they're already in a university or college, that even nurturing it with additional information, the more you know, the better off you are. And also, it comes back to experience. Get your feet wet. Jump into any kind of position and start learning what works and what doesn't, because I'm sure all of us can agree that some of our most greatest amounts of knowledge have been gained through making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. So I think the more experience that you get, the better off you'll be. And the more you have someone to show you the way, the better off you'll be as well. Get a mentor and someone that can help show you the path to success.
Agreed. And Courtney, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think the part about finding your voice is really interesting. And one thing that I talk a lot about with my mentees is that it takes time to find your voice. A lot of people assume that finding your voice means being the loudest one in the room or talking the most in the room. It could not be farther from the truth, right? It took me forever to, when I talked about earlier about that boldness and that fearlessness of like, what does that mean? What does that mean for me? What are those right opportunities to use my voice? What are the battles I'm willing to die on, if you will? And also, how can I use my advocates? Maybe they're a better person to help get my point across and really lean on them. So I think finding your voice is a journey. And I think that that's something, it takes a lot of self-reflection, it takes a lot of self-awareness, it takes a lot of feedback. And so I always encourage people that it is a journey, but it's not a journey alone, and really to lean on other people for their thoughts and their honest criticism and constructive feedback, if you will, on how to use and grow that voice. But I also agree. I think there's so many different lanes in which you can enter this world. And again, I always just encourage people just to ask. I think people are always so intimidated. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. And people are so intimidated about where do I start? How do I ask them? How do I meet them? What do I say? What do I do? And they always feel like they're a bother. And I always say everybody in this room was in your shoes. Everybody had that moment where we were graduating college or moving on to that next phase and we were like, oh crap, I need a job. I gotta figure out where to go, I gotta figure out how I'm making money, and I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do, right? We've all been there. And so everybody has a little empathy or should have a little empathy for people who are looking to join this field. And even if you can only spare 5 minutes or 10 minutes just to say, hey, here's what I do on the day-to-day, or help them explore their journey, I always encourage that. And I always just say, for us to go back on the youth, I understand we're all busy, but try to never make the answer no. Maybe it's not yet. Maybe it's not right now. But if you can help make space for the youth to ask those questions and create a safe space for them to feel good about asking questions and exploring what this industry could look like, I think that helps open the doors a lot and makes marketing and advertising more accepted and inclusive to anybody in the youth that's exploring that.
That is great advice. I have one last question for our panelists. Of course. Are any of you currently mentoring another woman in marketing? Or does your organization have an intern program? And what is a success story that you could share? Courtney, we'll start.
Yeah, I love to be a mentee, or a mentor, and a mentee, but I love to be a mentor. I've just seen incredible managers and mentors in my life, and I honestly feel like at this level it's my responsibility to give back and to share whatever failures, successes, opportunities with other people. So I love to be a mentee. I think you mentioned this in my bio. I work really closely with the 4As and the MATE program, especially for young advertising students of color, and making sure again that they can help see a path into advertising. I work with our local chapters. I work within our ERGs and just the younger account coordinators and new business coordinators and everyone that's more junior at Martin. So I love to work with mentees. And success stories I honestly just love when I'm talking to someone who might be struggling with their confidence, and for the first time you see them speak up. So I remember there was this one, and she actually was pretty mid-level. She wasn't even like a very junior strategist. And anytime she had something to say, she would slap me on the side. And she'd be like, I think I want to say this. How do you feel about this? And her instincts were so spot on. And I was just like, just say it. Just say it in the meeting. And you'll start to build that courage. And so for the first time, I could hear her stutter a little bit, like, and I was like, go. And I was like, Ryan, you can do it. And it was honestly one of the winning strategies to a pitch that we were working on. And it came from her. And I was like, that idea would have got lost in the Slack or lost in yourself if you didn't speak up. So it's those little moments for me that really I love to celebrate. I'm like getting like teary-eyed just thinking about it. But And then just being able to watch people grow up throughout their career, getting that first promotion or that first big salary or that first, they even get their own direct report to work with. I think those are just awesome moments to see.
Tiffany, could you add to that?
Yes, so when it comes to an intern success story, it actually involves the UNLV Lee School of Business. And so I had an intern at a company that I previously worked at called GeoTrack, and they came to us and they had a learning disability, and I thought hard and I said, okay, we're gonna take this on. And now they just got their first actual physical paid job at Opportunity Village this year. So I was really excited to see that happen. And also, as I work towards building this women in tech community, the women in tech marketing community, I definitely would like to open the door for more internships and mentor opportunities. But one way that I'm helping mentor people and women that are already in women in tech is to help market themselves. And one example I can give is Krisha Caraway, who is the director of Walmart's last mile drone delivery. And it's such a complicated but overlooked job. She deals with IoT and robotics and all types of drone delivery things. And this is just one example of the many women that I've featured in my series. But it's just such a role that's overlooked. So we have an Industry Insights IoT Awards that we do each year. And one of the categories is Most Inspiring Woman in Tech. And so that's just one of the ways that we have elevate and market women that are in leadership positions that should be elevated and deserve to be elevated for all of their efforts.
That is so cool.
Thank you. One other thing, paid internships
Yes.
are great for interns. Encourage paid internships. They deserve to get paid.
Well, I want to take a moment and say thank you so much to Tiffani Neilson and Courtney Jones for coming out, being our panelists for Women in Marketing. Thank you. I also want to acknowledge Heather Seltzer in the back of the room. The two of us put on today's program, and it was her pleasure. I'm going to hand it back over to Ms. Karen Alonso.
Do you have any questions from the audience? Do you have time for a few questions?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Thank you.
Going back to advocacy, do you have any strategies or any guidance if you are a woman in this industry and you want to not advocate for yourself, but help encourage or lift up other people to be able to advocate for themselves if they're more quiet and fearful?
I can go first for this. I think I always encourage people, build your own resume and on the side. So a lot of times speaking up about your accomplishments is one feat, but then a lot of people get so consumed in their day-to-day that they're like, oh, but my manager sees me doing this, or so-and-so sees me doing this. And I'm always like, no. We have so many things that we're dealing with on a day-to-day. But I always encourage people that if you I have a folder, still to this day I have a folder that says yay. I need to come up with a better name for it. But it's anytime somebody celebrates something that I've done, and I always save it. So I always encourage people to save those emails of encouragement, so that way when you have that on your kind of promotion or advocacy resume. But also on your list, right? Like, so build these lists of things. Hey, I led this project for the first time, or I coached somebody through this for the first time. Or all of these little moments that I think a lot of us consider to be little moments, not necessarily big moments, they all add up. And so that way, when you're ready to have the conversation about advocating for yourself or advocating for someone else, you already have everything that you need and everything that you've accomplished to then say, and honestly, it's a time to brag about yourself. A lot of times people are so afraid to brag about the work that they're doing and the good that they're doing, but when you see it on paper, you're like, oh, I did all of that. Okay, I do have a little confidence going into this room, right? So I always just encourage people to first start and go through your own accolades, collect feedback from people who work really closely for you because they might acknowledge something as an accolade that maybe you didn't even see for yourself. And then practice when you're going to have that conversation with whoever you need to advocate. I always get a friend, a really close friend who I know is going to give me that kind of act of encouragement and confidence. And I literally practice. I literally say, here's how I'm going to go into the conversation. Here's what I want to say. Can you give me the scenario where they're like, nope, don't agree with you. But can you also give me the scenario where they're like, oh, wow, you're right. You really do deserve this. So that way I can be prepared for both scenarios. And then you go do it and give yourself a little pep talk. But again, start with this list. Get some feedback from your peers. and practice the conversation before you do it. But you have to be an advocate for yourself. It's nobody's gonna advocate for you, especially if you're not doing it for yourself. So you've got to take that first step.
And just to add to that, I would say don't be afraid to ask, because what's the worst someone can say? No. And it just takes having the courage to ask for that. But it's also that advocacy and encouragement are a two-way street. And just if you look at LinkedIn alone, if you leave someone a positive review on LinkedIn, chances are they're going to leave you a positive review. If you recommend someone for being skilled at a certain topic, they're going to recommend you in return. And LinkedIn is such a powerful tool. So I would say that's definitely a great place to start when it comes to advocacy.
So I have, it's kind of funny because I feel like both of you guys were talking to me, like specifically, but like in different, I feel like. So I've been having this conversation like a lot lately, especially because it is Women's History Month, but it's kind of two sides of the same coin, I guess. So it's hard for me to know what I'm missing out on, like as a woman, because like if you don't know, you don't know, right? But I've never really felt like I've missed out on opportunities, or I've never really felt marginalized, either as a woman of color or as a woman in tech marketing. So, which I'm both. So I guess like I'm kind of wondering, like, first, do you feel marginalized in your in the industries, respectively, either as a woman of color or as a woman in tech, and how so?
I guess I'll lead out on this one. I would say only when I'm the only woman in the room, which happens a lot. So, I mean, in those moments, it's humbling to know that I have a role in the room and that I have things to say that are valuable. And I think just when you're in those moments and you recognize it, just own it and just know what you're worth and just to speak from your experience, speak your truth, and just own the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, have I felt marginalized? Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing for me, and that was a journey, honestly, of how I've had to understand that, grow through that, and figure that out, to be honest with you. But the biggest thing that I've always encouraged, especially other women of color, is that if you're in the room, you deserve to be there. And it is a disservice to everybody else in the room if you are not 100% who you are. And there's a very big difference between being your authentic self and bringing your whole self. I can do a whole talk on this. I actually don't think you need to bring your whole self to work, because then you leave nothing for everything else in your life. But if you can bring your authentic self, it makes you better, it makes them better, it makes the work better, it makes the environment better. And that's not to say that it's going to come without resistance. That's where the feeling marginalized comes in. But at the end of the day, I'm very, very proud of, for example, having conversations about diversity in the work. I forever was the only person to say, hey, we need to make some tweaks to this. Now I'm the last person who has to say anything, because there's a bunch of other people who are flagging that for me. And that's just one example. So I always just say, like, stand in your truth, know who you are. And honestly, like I said, your value is worth so much, and make everybody else in the room see that.
Courtney, Courtney and Tiffany, thank you so much. This content has been amazing. It's been authentic and amazing. My question to both of you is, as you look at this upcoming, finishing out the upcoming year and on into 2024, what are you most excited about?
Great question. What am I most excited about? First, once you think too, pause.
Well, one of the things that I'm looking immediately forward to is we're doing our first ever Green Things Summit. And I think that it's so important to focus on the environment right now and what's happening with sustainability, but true sustainability, and how we can recycle everything from, I mean, how many people are still throwing away batteries in the trash? You should not throw away batteries in the trash. And so being able to bring important topics like this to the forefront of conversations is so important as we look at just the direction that the environment is going. And so being able to talk about that to the masses and the excitement that we have towards that event, and towards that we're doing a Summit of Things event. So we're expanding what we're currently doing into summits and bringing more people into the conversation and letting them do different kinds of conversations. And I look forward to the future in so many ways, especially seeing all these new technologies that are coming out and meeting all of you and possibly becoming a member of AMA. So, yeah. Thank you for inviting me.
That was great.
Call her, Dave.
You touched on a very important point, sustainability, and I just want to add on to that. I think, especially when we're looking from an agency landscape, a lot of times clients feel a lot of pressure on agencies to set the standard, right? And clients aren't necessarily doing the same thing. I've seen a lot of clients, whether it's in RFPs or things that we go through for new business, to get invited to opportunities where they're not just saying, how sustainable are you? It's no. Describe scope 1 and 2, scope 3. What are your efforts? What are you doing internally? And diving into just the same trend we saw with D&I and how people were getting really, really granular about those conversations. I think sustainability is a huge one. Actually, right now at Martin, we're doing a sustainability hackathon. I'm so sad that I'm not there, but it's really how can we push our clients to have more sustainable efforts. So really, really excited about that. I'm also really excited just for more networking and conferences. I love to see events like this, but also other larger scale conferences. Things need to be done differently, right? People aren't just craving information, they're craving action. And I've seen a lot of these things like South by Southwest. I don't know if any of you guys had an opportunity to go, but just the programming of these conferences has just been just so much more depth to them than they've had in a very, very long time. And so I'm really, really excited just to see what comes out of those, the talent that comes out of those, the conversation that comes out of those, and then the influence back to that on the work and the people. So very, very excited for those.
Do we have any more questions before we close out? Well, Tiffani, Courtney, thank you so much. You guys were inspiring. You tugged at my heartstrings. Thank you for sharing your experience. Let's give them a round of